Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and we are actually speaking just a couple of days before a great, by the time you listen to this, you're probably this is a great man. Actually, this is on Christmas, right? There's a great man who was born who changed the lives of many, many people. His name is Armin Navabi. And Armin, how old are you? Do you want to talk about how old you're going to be?
Wait, I forgot. Oh, 37. I almost said 37.
37. Oh yeah, that's a great age. I remember. That's when everything really starts getting good. Right. After that. So we're here on this December evening, and we are going to talk about something that is happening in the places that we grew up. Okay, and it's actually pretty crazy how fast the transformation is happening there. We're going to be talking about Iran, Israel, and the Middle East. So we have seen some monumental changes in the Middle East and in Iran in the last few years. You've had the assassinations of Qasem Soleimani by the U.S. You've had the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh by Israel, the nuclear scientist, Iranian nuclear scientist. We've seen virtually no serious retaliation by the Iranians, despite them threatening to do so repeatedly. Meanwhile, more and more Arab nations are joining, the group. Well, there's a bunch of Arab nations that are establishing diplomatic ties with Israel, included UAE. There's Bahrain. Saudi Arabia allowed Israel to fly over its airspace, so you can actually take a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Dubai and fly over Saudi Arabia to do it. And then Sudan, and most recently Morocco, the North African Arabic-speaking nation. So there's all of this stuff happening on both sides, and since the Iran deal was ripped up, now that the Biden administration's coming in, they're probably going to be dealing with a completely different Middle East and a different kind of Iran/Israel/Arab world dynamic. So Armin, just very generally, what do you think of what's happening and where do you think it's going?
It seems like the Biden administration's main criteria is to move a little bit away out of dealing with Middle Eastern stuff, right? And focusing more on China. And I mean, for everything me and Ali are both like very much anti-Trump administration. But I always try to find things that I could highlight maybe as a positive, just so that I know that I'm not dogmatically anti-Trump. And I think like this might be it, right? This whole bringing these all of this. I don't know how much Trump deserves credit for it, but let's be charitable and be like it was him, because there's not much else that I can point to. But I think like this this
is big. I think he deserves credit.
He deserves a lot of credit for. I mean, this is not necessarily like peace in the Middle East, but it's like the closest thing, like the best attempt at bringing countries that were not allies. Like since Sadat, this has never been. Nobody has been able to make this much progress in such a short amount of time. And this is really cornering the Islamic Republic of Iran into a very uncomfortable position, which is really, really great. I hope that it's Trump. Biden is not like Trump, who's going to be anti everything that the previous administration did. So I don't know how much people have this idea that Trump did it, so it must be bad. I hope it's not like that with the Biden administration. I hope the Biden administration sees tries to continue with this path, right? Rather than throw it away because Trump did it. I don't think that's how.
I think Biden administration is actually quite on board with the new diplomatic relations with these Arab countries,
Right.
and Israel. Uh, and one of the reasons is just because of and I've talked about this here before, the economic benefit. I mean, these are some of the biggest economic powerhouses in the Middle East. So when Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and all of these countries sort of align, right, and they're together, and especially anti-Iran, you've got this huge economic powerhouse alliance, right, against Iran, which is kind of doing things the old school way. We're like, going to shoot missiles, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, like Game of Thrones style. So there's I think that the Biden administration is actually quite on board with it. They might even try to take credit for it in some way, but I don't think that they're going to reject that aspect of things. I mean, that stuff I think everybody believes is pretty monumental and positive.
Yeah, and I think Israel's intelligence agencies, as much as again, but again, when it comes to Israel, as much as I'm against all the right wing politicians there, especially anti-Netanyahu. I don't know who deserves credit in Israel's government. I think it's mostly the intelligence agencies that deserve a lot of credit for the way they have maneuvered, like took out the main scientist, the nuclear scientist of Iran, took down the main one recently, right? Fakhrizadeh, managed to cause a lot of the virus that they sent that halted a lot of the operations, the taking down of the centrifuge center in Iran, burning it down like by Israeli operations inside Iran. These are the alternatives to war that are full on war that are right? Like people sometimes think they have no right to do this. You either get this, sanctions, or war, right? When it comes to the more of this you get, the less war you're going to get, because the alternative is to just go in and just neutralize the whole threat, and we don't want that. So I think this is all very great. I do think that I don't know how much Netanyahu deserves credit for it. I think that this is mostly independent from the politics in Israel. This is the people that are in the intelligence agencies, which are a lot less ideological themselves. They might take advantage of the ideological leanings of their enemies, and they take that into account when they plan these things, but they themselves are a lot less ideological than the politicians in Israel.
Yeah, I think if anything, Netanyahu does benefit from this in many ways. Well, I mean, it's choppy. Okay, sorry guys.
Choppy, but say it again.
Okay, it's going to clear up now. Yeah, so I think he benefits from it, not just because of the obvious reasons where he's got these Arab allies now, and it's against Iran, but he also benefits from it domestically in the sense that now he has an excuse to sort of ally himself more with the liberal, to move a little bit more centrist, and then also that also gives him an excuse to distance himself from the sort of orthodox far right, the people that the occupation freaks, right? Like the people who want to settle, like the orthodox, hyper orthodox Jewish fundamentalists. So there's that aspect as well. I don't know if I'm still choppy.
Yeah, a little bit. But by next month, Ali, I think it's going to be less choppy.
The new connection I have in the new place is the fastest connection available in Canada. I paid like crazy for it specifically for this reason.
Right. I do think that the Biden, if it's true, if the reports that we're getting that the Biden administration's main focus is going to be a little bit less hands-on in the Middle East, to focus their attention on China. If that is true, then these allies are going to be key. Okay, not just these Arab countries, right? These Gulf Arab countries, not just the Arab countries, not the Arab countries, the Gulf Arab countries. They're extremely desperate, right? They are, as oil prices continue to plummet, they are going to be devastated, right? And I don't especially Saudi. I don't know if people understand. In the next 10 years, Saudi Arabia, like as much as things have been devastated, been looking bad for with regards to sanctions and all, but when it comes to Islamic Republic, they are way more. The future for the Islamic Republic looks a lot more stable than Saudi Arabia. Okay, and as soon as the the foundations of this government, which doesn't even seem like, it's just like it's being held together right now with duct tape, right? And as soon as it gets more shaky, um, Iran, the Islamic Republic, is just waiting. They have so many ways that they could just paralyze the whole thing, right? And the Saudi government is like terrified. They're terrified, and they're looking for allies. Like a lot of people think that, oh, like they're getting closer to Israel. This is a good move, as if they had a choice, right? They are desperate for any allies, especially given that the United States is looking like they're gonna slowly move out, right? They have even a video out, like propaganda video, begging Americans to like, I could actually highlight that, bring out I did a review on it on the Persian channel. They're like, please don't leave us. Like, these people are going to eat us alive. But if United States is also making a strategic decision, because if United States wants to be more hands off, it needs to rely on their allies around it. And I think, like, one thing that I think Biden administration might look into is to fix their relationship with Turkey. There's a lot of places, like Turkey is like when it comes to military power and economic influence, trade, they are like a major heavyweight, right? So whatever, like all this recent back and forth, like struggle between United States and Turkey, as much as I don't want Turkey to become more influential around the region, right? Just like Iran is building a Shia empire, is bringing back, wants to bring back the Safavid dynasty. Turkey is trying to also bring back the Ottoman dynasty around the region. But as much as I hate that, strategically it makes sense for United States to let them, because they're a NATO ally. They're a serious arm. Like, I know, like, if you compare them to United States or even Russia, their army is not, their power and their economy doesn't seem like, for Americans, that doesn't seem like a big deal. But no, they're like, when you compare them to countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, like Turkey is a serious country, right? Like, you can't do the things, you cannot be even if you want to, European countries and North American countries, they cannot be outright hostile. Like, they can never treat Turkey ever the way they treat Iran, right? Even if, because, there's so many trades, there's so many, Turkey could throw its weight around in the Mediterranean Sea, and basically now they're doing the Iran model, but in a more serious way. They're getting involved in Libya, Syria, Iraq. They're gonna be like, guys, if you don't negotiate, if you don't go through us, we can make things difficult for all of you, right? And Turkey could going forward, Turkey could become a lot more anti-US, or it could become more pro-US, right? And if it does become more, if the new administration starts sending signals the way Trump sent signals to the Gulf Arab countries, send signals to Turkey that, you know what, we want to work with you, but without us being here, Turkey would love that. Turkey, because unlike the Gulf Arab countries, they're Gulf Arab countries like, we can't do this without you. Where are you going? And United States is like, you guys have to figure this out with Israel, I guess, right? But if Turkey hears the message, like, guys, if we have some goals that are aligned, if we step out, you guys could step in. Turkey, like, yes, we do want to step in. We do want to, be more influential in the region, and you guys stepping out and relying on us, we could cooperate like this here. We could definitely cooperate, right? And I think this is I think Trump played well for set the everything well for Biden right now, because Trump is going a little bit more aggressive on Turkey, and with the whole sanctions and stuff because of the missiles that they sold to Russia. So Biden could come and that was the previous guy, I'm going to now play ball with you guys. So basically Trump said it really perfectly for Biden to take advantage of this pressure that Trump has put on Turkey to be like, let's do a reset here, right? But yeah, I have a lot more to say, but you can go before I continue.
Yeah, no, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about how the Saudis are terrified. Right? Sorry, you're muted. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. Go on.
Yeah, so the Saudis are terrified. So it's actually, this, I guess Tom Friedman summed it up. He has an op-ed, I think, that came out late last month called "Dear Joe, It's Not Just About Iran's Nukes Anymore." So I wanted to get your view on this too. So apparently one of the reasons that the Saudis are terrified is because Iran kind of showed its capabilities in September 2019. They launched around 20 drones and precision-guided cruise missiles at where Saudi Arabia's oil fields, the center of its oil fields in Abqaiq, and there was a lot of damage, obviously. So these missiles, they came in, they flew really low, they were completely undetectable. The Saudis didn't detect them. The U.S. radar couldn't detect them, and Israel also, when they saw this, they were absolutely astounded by it. And according to Friedman, they described this as the Middle East Pearl Harbor. So this has caused a lot of concern on the part of Israel, on the part of Saudi Arabia, on the part of the United Arab Emirates, right? Because the conventional wisdom, they kind of know that if Iran has nukes, it's not really going to use them because that would be suicidal, right? And again, you may have some counterpoints to that. But when it comes to this kind of technology, like just stealth precision missiles, right? Precision guided missiles. I mean, this is the kind of thing that can cause tremendous damage because they're also trying to sell them, these missiles, this technology to Lebanon, right? To Yemen. And if you remember, like 2006, when Hezbollah, they did the war on Israel, they caused quite a bit of damage. I mean, Israel had to put up a fight to eventually put all of that stuff to rest, that conflict to rest. But if they had precision-guided missiles at that time that they got from Iran the way that they're using right now, it could be absolutely devastating. So this is another reality, I think, that they're going to face, the U.S. and Israel are going to have to contend with. So in response to this, Trump did increase U.S. troop presence. He sent several thousand troops to Saudi Arabia, and he also sent them, I think, it says here, anti-missile batteries to bolster the defense. But at the same time, there is a lot of fear on the part of Saudi Arabia and Israel and the U.S. in terms of like these new capabilities that Iran has now that they didn't before. And now that Iran deal's gone, if Biden actually lifts the sanctions, Iran has said that it's going to go right back to enriching all of its uranium and continuing with its nuclear plan. So the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the deal in exchange for lifting the sanctions, or are you going to keep the sanctions on and then try to come up with a new deal? So that's also another pretty big challenge for them.
And your understanding is that the nuclear issue is not that big of a deal anymore compared to the missile?
No. The nuclear issue is a deal. Of course, it's a big deal. But now there is this new, more acute threat. Right, like as in,
but that
Iran
article, before we went live, you mentioned that article made it seem like the nuclear deal, like Iran going nuclear, is not that big of a threat anymore because they're never going to be.
Yeah, so I'll say what it says here. Okay, I'll actually read it out because it's kind of interesting. It says that this is where the problems will start for Biden. Yes, Israel and the Sunni Arab states want to make sure that Iran can never develop a nuclear weapon. So that's still a priority. But some Israeli military experts will tell you today that the prospect of Iran having a nuke is not what keeps them up at night, because they don't see Tehran using it. That would be suicide, and Iran's clerical leaders are not suicidal. They are, though, homicidal. And Iran's new preferred weapons for homicide are the precision-guided missiles that it used on Saudi Arabia.
This is a major misunderstanding by these. Who's this commentator?
Oh no, this is Thomas Friedman. He's in touch with all of the military experts in Israel. Like he's
not. He's an idiot. Then he's an idiot. Okay, or he's an idiot. Well, he's
not an idiot. He's
being moronic here. Okay, because here's the thing. I remember his takes on Saudi Arabia was also I was right and he was wrong. Okay. When it comes to Ben Salman. Remember that? So don't listen to what?
Saudi when it comes Salman. To Ben Salman,
when he had so much hope. Isn't this the same guy that was so hopeful about the Ben Salman reform? And I was like, that is so naive.
He was also very hopeful about the Iraq war. So I'll tell you where I think.
No, can you confirm what I'm saying though? Like this is the same guy that yes.
This guy.
So let me answer you.
Wait, let me clear up what this guy said.
But
this guy was actually sort of measured about MBS. He said that this could go in a very good way. That was what he said.
It could have never gone. I was told. Yeah, I came out and told that that's dumb. That's a dumb take, and I was right. Right.
But let me just explain the thing.
But I wasn't finished though. Okay, go ahead.
I know. Before you make the point, right? So. When it comes to his analysis about the Iraq war, about MBS and everything, he's very wrong a lot of the times, right? But when it comes to his reporting, when he's actually talking about what the Israel military experts or the military leaders are saying, what certain presidents are thinking in terms of their foreign policy. So he's actually quite frequently consulted. He interviews, like he interviewed Obama, he interviewed Biden, he interviewed Trump. So he's done, and especially in the Middle East, like MBS and all these guys, he's got a direct line to all of them. So he's very in touch with them in terms of reporting these things. Yeah.
So you just said the same thing 4 different ways, but can I get my time to?
Yes.
Okay. To say because I was about to talk about.
You're taking up your time.
Yeah. So I was gonna say he's a moron. The reason why is that this idea, like he's basically bringing up a point that was never an issue. The whole idea of being against Iran that has access to nuclear weapons is not about them using it. That is like what is he even responding to? Of course they're not going to use it if they have it, but the consequences of them having a nuclear weapon is going to be catastrophic, even if they never use it. And they are never going to use it, right? They are going to be able to throw their weight around the Middle East a lot more aggressively than they are. I mean, look at the difference between the way they treat North Korea than they treat Iran. Okay, North Korea is not suicidal either. Okay, but look at the way negotiations are done with North Korea. Look at the way negotiations were done with what happened to Gaddafi after he got rid of his weapons. Right? They're like, Iran is looking at it and like, you know what? We don't want the Gaddafi outcome. We want the North Korea outcome. Obviously, right? Imagine like the empire building that Iran, the Islamic Republic, is doing around the region. It's how bold they are right now. Imagine if they had the assurance that they will never be attacked. Imagine what would they do once they have a nuclear weapon. Do you think that, do you think they need to use it to be a lot more destructive?
Yeah.
Who are these people that we are responding to? That people who thought like, oh yeah, Iran, if they have a nuclear weapon, they're probably going to use it. Like, use it against who? Like, of course that's going to be the end of them, like the day after. Like the day after, the entire world is going to be on their borders. Like, who is this a response to? Of course, like this was never an issue, right? So this is my point.
So I'll paraphrase, what I think he's saying, and then my interpretation of it and how I take it is that the nuclear issue is still a huge deal for all the reasons you're saying. It's going to start an arms race. They're pretty much in the Middle East, where there are a lot of actors where it's the worst place that you want to start an arms race in. So the nuclear thing is a big problem. Okay. But in addition to that, at first people thought, well, they're not going to use the nuclear weapons. So, we just have to worry about containing it. But now there's a problem where, okay, we're containing the nuclear weapons, but now they have this aggressive capability with these really amazing precision-guided missiles that our radar cannot detect, which actually is a direct threat. These are things that can hit our cities. We saw that in 2006 from Lebanon with Hezbollah. right? And now, if it's precision guided and if this kind of technology, how are we going to stop it? Okay, so it's not that the nuclear issue is good. We don't have to worry about the nukes anymore. That's not the point. The point is that that issue was already there, but now there's this new, more acute threat that's superimposed on it that is not just about a long-term strategic concern about the Middle East, but it's also a defensive concern that, okay, this can actually hit us. So it has been added onto it, which is why, and
It
this
was
is,
always there. It was okay. So let me just say this is another thing
Mhm.
that you could give some. You could say that the Trump administration had some points, right? That the problem with the first deal was the fact that the missiles were never mentioned, right? And when Trump was saying that, it's very interesting because the Europeans were not agreeing with that, right? They're like, "Oh, the deal was great and all." But now that Trump is leaving,
Yeah.
the Europeans are like, maybe if we're gonna come back to this deal, we should mention
Yes.
the missiles, right? So
Yes.
all the problems that the Trump administration had with the deal, now Europeans are like coming after. This isn't okay. So here's the thing. Here's how difficult it is to be strategic with all of this, okay? Because it does seem genius for the Islamic Republic, because the Islamic Republic has mastered asymmetrical warfare, right? With very very little budget, you are causing a lot of cost for countries like Saudi Arabia that do the biggest weapons deals in history with the United States, and they like deals that the most advanced modern weapons that money could buy. Saudi Arabia buys it for defense and for attack from United States, and they are being with all of that, they're being defeated by a bunch of speedboats in the Persian Gulf, by a bunch of Houthis that didn't even used to have shoes, and by some really, really, like, just a couple of tens of thousands of dollars worth of drone technology that manages to just sneak in and to go and attack the underbelly of the world's economy, which the oil. What percentage of the oil of the world comes from the Hormuz Strip? I forgot what it was, but it was a
I
major
don't know.
percentage. Yeah, but like by just that, like, and the fact that Saudi Arabia keeps losing over and over and over and over again, even though they are way more militarily advanced, more advanced than Iran could ever be, is just shows that how much. And I think this is an outcome of the Iran-Iraq war, right? And also all the tactics that Iran had to learn, dealing with enemies much bigger than it. So how to learn how, because they learned that the cost of going out going to direct war, like they cannot be able, they don't want to do that again, right? They're like, this is too much. So they have really figured out how to cause maximum damage without very little ties back to Tehran, direct ties to Tehran,
Mhm.
with very little investment, right? And defending yourself against that is really difficult, right? However, all of this, you know, I mean, Saudis were shocked. They're shouted like, look, and because with those drone attacks, that was a sign, because it could have been a lot worse, right? I mean, imagine if Iran, without it showing any of its army, without having any ties to Tehran, managed to devastate their IPO of Aramco, right? Like the thing that they wanted to privatize to raise money for their 2030 plan in Saudi Arabia, that was devastated with just a bunch of drones. Imagine if Iran all of a sudden and Saudi Arabia decide to go to war with each other. Like Saudi Arabia is like,
That's
yeah, we can't deal
yeah.
with this. Like, there's no way we can deal with this, right? So Saudi Arabia is like realizing how vulnerable they are when with Iran next to them.
Right.
Like that
Because
was a
this
big,
was a signal. This was
yeah.
just a signal, right? And that's the thing. I mean, there's increasing the troops there by 5,000, and then sending, giving them anti-missile batteries. All of these things that the Trump administration is doing, right, is it shows that there is concern. There is a lot of fear, right,
Right.
about what they can do. So and that means that there is going to be pressure, obviously now with this new alliance and everything, on the new administration in the U.S. to include, like they're going to have to address the precision guided missiles, this technology that they have in the drones, in whatever kind of agreement or deal that they come up with. And then so there's that. There's the sanctions, whether you lift them or not lift them in exchange for these, concessions. And then there's also the nuclear issue. So it's actually become a lot more complicated.
Before we go to the nuclear issue, I just want to mention this is why I said it seemed very strategic at the time, right? Because now, if you look at what's happening, is that when you go and attack Saudi Arabia's oil supply, that's not an attack on Saudi Arabia. That's an attack on the world's economy, right, as a whole. And that's why what the negative side effect to all of that, to the Islamic Republic right now, might be if you ever were hoping to go back to the deal, you're making the Europeans all of a sudden agree maybe with the next administration of United States that, the missiles need to be on the table, right? And I think this is the difference. If Biden decides to make the missiles, it's very difficult to do that, right? Because let me tell you why it's difficult for Biden to actually make bring the missiles and include it into the deal, right? Because it was the United States that threw out the deal, right? So if they want to go, imagine how politically pathetic Iran's politicians are going to look if they told their people that, look at these, we agreed to this deal and they threw it away, right? So they're like, if they want to go back to this deal, they have to be on their knees begging us to go back to the deal. They are the ones who ruined it, right? They have to go back to what we negotiated, and they have to wait for us to respond to them, begging. But imagine if they come back and they're like, you know what, we let's go back to the deal, and we were the ones who threw it away, but we're now going to ask you to go back to it even though we threw it away, and we're going to ask for more. If Iran says yes to that, all this chest bumping to their people about we're going to force them to come back to the deal because they need us, because they recognize our hegemony in the Middle East, and they know that they can't do anything without us, and that's why they're crying sorry, we threw away the deal, that was this orange idiot that did that, please take us back. That's the image that they're trying to portray. That's what's happening. That is going to be really hard to sell that if they ask for more concessions and the Islamic Republic. So right now, Islamic Republic of Iran is very aggressively trying to signal that if you ask for more, we're not going to say yes. I don't know. Now the Biden administration has to see how much of that is a bluff, because the advantage that the Biden administration has to go back to this is that, unlike Trump, it might look like it's going to be based on what other countries are saying as well. It's not like Trump acting like, oh, I'm just going to go on our own way. All these mature people are having these discussions, and I'm just making a mess out of all these amazing deals that people worked on. It's not going to look like that, because if Biden all of a sudden wants to bring out the missile discussion, it might look like, oh yeah, no, I'm having a conversation with other adults in the room, which are our European allies, and they also agree that the missile should be that might work better, right? Yeah. But it might also look bad because people are like, dude, just go back to the deal that you have, right? But the thing is, that would be such a wasted opportunity if it goes back to the deal we have, because as Trump's sanctions is suffocating Iran's economy, right? Yeah. The pressure is so high that even if they might act tough, that, guys, we're not going to go back to the deal if you include the missiles, it might be so devastating right now that they don't have a choice, right? So whatever Trump did, all the sanctions and everything, you might be like, oh, it was a good idea, it was a bad idea. The thing is that they're there, right? So Biden might as well just take advantage of the fact that Iran's economy is just looking for any breathing room at all. Given that they are there, you might as well take advantage of it and just ask for more. Right.
Well, I mean, that's
use what Trump did to your advantage. The pressure is so extremely there that it would be so is such a wasted opportunity if you don't use this maximum pressure to ask for more from Iran. So this is kind of like a game of chicken, right? Is Iran bluffing that if you say that if I ask for more, there's definitely I'm not going to go back, right? Is there a way, but or are they bluffing? So, and if they're so desperate that if you offer it, they will have to take it, right? Would you throw away, like Biden administration has said that they want to do a deal, they're going to do a deal. If you ask for more, are you going to ruin the whole process and maybe lose everything that you might have gotten, or no, go for the kill? Ask for the missiles.
Well, it's got to be about that. The way that they came to the negotiating table in the first place, with the Obama administration, is because the Obama sanctions, which were at that time very crippling, and that forced them to come in and make, a certain amount of the deal. But the missiles weren't on the table then. So now the thing is that, again, I think the Trump sanctions are going to stay. I think the Biden administration is going to hold them up. Okay. And they're going to use that. They're going to use that in order to get more. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I think that this alliance that you have, with the UAE and the Saudis and the Bahrain and everything, and Israel, I think that adds a whole other level of pressure. Right.
Right.
Negotiation, but this is, I'm just wondering, because one of the things with Trump was that he tested him out. Like, I don't think any other administration would have, Republican or Democratic, would have gone ahead and just killed Qasem Soleimani. I don't think they would have done it, right? And to do that and to take the risk, right? Because the idea was that, okay, if we do that, they're going to retaliate big time. But nothing really happened. One thing that Trump did was he kind of tested the waters because he was just more, he's not very risk averse. Went and tested the waters and found out that, okay, they'll respond. They demonstrated their missile capability, but it seems like they're holding that hand for something else. It seems like right now they don't think it's big enough for them to respond, or they're anticipating the next chess move and they know it's going to be really, really bad. So they're not responding because of that. So they sort of tested not just Iran's capabilities, but Iran's will to use its capabilities and what the threshold for that is. And right now they haven't reached it. So they went ahead and they took another big risk by doing this incredible assassination of Fakhrizadeh, right? So it seems like they're both sort of pushing to see how far the other can go and to see how crippling the sanctions really are, how incapacitating they really are to Iran in terms of getting Iran to do something in response to them, right? So, I think there's a threshold testing, but I'm just wondering, how does it get to the point? Like, if there is a risk of Iran coming and using these missiles to destroy Aramco, and they could do that really, really easily without a detection or without anything else, then, what is there any will, or do you see anybody just going into Iran and just dealing with the problem militarily once and for all?
No, I don't see that. No.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I don't know, unless Trump's last few days he goes insane, and he just I don't know what's.
Well, I mean, not Trump. I'm saying even in the future, because I think that one of the reasons that they wanted to test them was to see how much they would have to do to get Iran to respond.
No.
Right?
I don't see that.
What the threshold would be, and it seems like that threshold's pretty high. It seems like Iran is so screwed over by these sanctions or whatever it's going through that it is willing to take a lot. Like these two assassinations, it's willing to take all kinds of these crippling sanctions, all of this stuff. It's willing to take, right, before it, because it clearly has the capabilities. This is not using them because something's working.
That became very clear, Ali, when in response to the killing of Qasem Soleimani, when Iran wanted to retaliate, they actually secretly contacted the Americans to pull their soldiers out before they attacked the U.S. base, right? So basically, Iran wanted to make sure that there were no American casualties because they were afraid of the reaction, okay? But that was even before Trump losing the election, right? Yeah. Now, they're even more trying to be careful and be at their best behavior, right? This is why you haven't even seen any response to Fakhri. Okay, this is how pathetic Iran is right now. Okay, so when Qasem Soleimani, I would say the second most influential person in Iran, which is Qasem Soleimani when it comes to foreign policy, right? If Khamenei is number one, Qasem Soleimani was number two. Okay, you take out that guy, and your response is not to kill even a single American, to actually warn them so that they don't die. That's the pathetic response, okay? You look so pathetically weak, right, in the eyes of your own. This is why now they're executing journalists, because the Iranians are looking at this like, you guys are so weak. Maybe we should maybe we should topple the government. This is why you see executions now of Ruhul Azam, because Iran is trying to remind its people that we still have teeth. By the way, like know your goddamn place. We might not be able to take it Americans, but we can do whatever we want to you, right? Just like sit back, right? But now this is why Mossad, when they took out Fakhrizadeh, it was the perfect timing. Like this is like there's this. If this assassination doesn't turn into a movie, I'm going to be mad, okay? Because the way was, I'm not going to go over the ways that it was carried out, but it's like 007 sort of stuff, right? It was so perfect. And even though the guy was like this like right next to his wife, and not a single other person other than the nuclear scientists were killed. Not a single, there were no casualties. It was a perfect assassination. It was carried out the way the explosion at the beginning, the misdirection, the AI, satellite, everything that was involved, the face recognition of the target before him being taken out. It was beautiful. And the timing of it was perfect as well. The timing of it was perfect, because this is exactly when Iran, like, was when Trump administration lost, right? Now Israel knows that Iran is trying to make a new deal with Biden. So any form of retaliation by Iran is going to make this deal very, very difficult for Biden. So they were like, this is when we take Fakhrizadeh out, because if either Iran retaliates, which is going to make the deal much more difficult, which is a win for Israel, or they don't retaliate, which is, look, we took out your top nuclear scientist and you didn't even respond. How pathetically weak do you look? So it's a win-win. It was a perfect timing and it was a perfect execution. So that's about that.
Just one little thing. There's when we're talking about signals, like demonstrating capabilities and demonstrating technologies, the way they assassinated this guy is also a signal. It's like we've got satellite guided, AI face recognition of the target. We've got a human-less assassination, using a machine gun that is also precision guided. I mean, they can do that stuff. They can do that stuff. That's also another thing. Like, because this happened recently, right? And this happened after Iran did the whole precision guided missile thing, the Abqaiq attacks. So it seems like that they're also both sides are trying to show what kind of capabilities they have and how potentially, like, we'll do this one little thing right now, like we'll get a couple of oil fields in Abqaiq, or we're going to shoot this, we're going to kill this one nuclear scientist that you have, but just look at the way that we're doing it and imagine what else we could do with this technology.
Yeah, you're not safe in Iran. And again, this is another difference between how big of a deal this was, because Qasem Soleimani was killed by the Americans outside of Iranian's borders, okay? And he was a military commander, okay? But this guy was a scientist, arguably a civilian. I wouldn't say so. He's part of IRGC, so he's not a civilian. He's part of the Cold War right now. He's the guy that's responsible for putting nukes on the goddamn missiles, right? So I actually have to get back to that, right? Inside Iran's border. So a lot of these people are ideological, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them knowing that, like, even if you're in Iran and you're a scientist or whatever talent you are, right, and you're working with the Islamic Republic, you know that you could be taken out. And I know a lot of people outside of Iran has this idea that all of them are ideological and they're willing to give their life for Allah and religion and Khamenei. No, they're not. They want power, they want money, they want they want security, right? So the idea of, like, more of them, if they're high up there, knowing that they're Mossad running in this country, and there's the government cannot provide security for me. Like, they're gonna think twice before how much influential they want to be in this, So this is a message for anyone else in Iran that wants to provide the know-how. Like this is going to change a lot of people's career choices, right? In Iran.
Change a lot of people's loyalty. It's going to change a lot of people's loyalty to the clerical establishment as well. It's like, what if we're find out? I mean, we're watching. There are drones watching us. There's AI watching us. There's these machines that we can't even detect that are recognizing our faces on the street in our own country. And if they can do it to the top nuclear scientists, what if I am loyal? What if they find out that I am doing this for the government? What if they find out I'm doing that for the government? What is my fate? I mean, everybody is going to look over their digital shoulder.
It's
right?
so pathetic that this guy who's a top security, right, top nuclear scientist, and his security was pathetic, right? I mean, everybody else is like, "Guy, this was the most important scientist that you had, and you did it." His car wasn't even bulletproof. Like, what's the rest? If you can't protect this guy, what are like? This is, by the way, this is what. Let me tell you this. Oof, this has been the narrative. To fact that I was wondering what the main narrative is going to be on Twitter, Iranian Twitter sphere when Fakhrizadeh was killed. I was wondering, are they going to be like, "Oh, this was great," or "This is bad," or like, who's going to be winning? What narrative is going to be winning on the Iranian Twitter sphere? But what I didn't predict, which I should have, which is going to be this idea that because for the past couple of years, because how I know a lot of people, maybe Americans, would be know this narrative, like, oh, why are we in those other countries instead of fixing things back home, right? Like, oh, we look at our roads, look at the water, look at Flint, and we guys spending billions of dollars in other countries where we have problems at home. This is not unique to your country, okay? A lot of Iranians are asking the same thing. Like, why is our military in Syria? Why is there military in Yemen? Why is our military in Iraq? Why are we doing Lebanon? What the hell are we doing all these? And a lot of Iranians are like, get shocked, like, wait, we're also in Africa? Like, what the hell are we doing in Africa? Right? Apparently we have operations there as well. Like, they're like shocked, like, what the hell has happened? Like, we have so much problems at home, and this is one of the main chants that people have when they come out in protest against the government. You say Naqazen and Lebanon, Janam Fadai Iran. They're like, you guys are wasting all our money on your ambitions for building an Islamic Shia empire, right? And the counter narrative from the government is the same as you hear in other countries. We fight them there, so we don't have to fight them back home. Their idea is that, guys, we know times are tough. We know your food portions have been halved. We know that the currency have tanked because of the sanctions. We know, like, maybe you have problems with personal liberties and hijab and not freedom of speech. But what you do have is security. Okay, and that is the most important thing, because they say what the Islamic Republic has provided you. Look at your neighbors. Okay, look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at Libya. Okay, look at Afghanistan. We don't have war in Iran. We haven't had war in Iran for a very long time, and we have provided you security. Because if it wasn't for people like Qasem Soleimani, there would be one ISIS member raping every single woman in Iran right now. That's what they actually say. Okay, they would be like, this is what we're protecting our women. Okay, we're protecting our. That's what they actually say as the defense, right? So that's what they're like, if you're unhappy with food, economy, and healthcare and all of that, just know that you're getting security for all the suffering. Maybe one day we also solve all those things, but at least now you have security, and that's the most important thing. And now the counter narrative to when Fakhrizadeh was killed, a lot of Iranians came on Twitter and say, like, you guys can't even protect your most valued assets. How are you going to protect the rest of us? Like, people just walk in, your number one enemy just walks right in, takes out your nuclear scientist, and walks back out, and you haven't even arrested a single person. You don't have a single person responsible for this action. This is how easy it is to take the person that is most valuable to us, and you are pretending that you can protect the rest of us.
Where does this go then, Armin? So you've got these capabilities on one side. We've seen that signal. That's terrifying, what Iran can do. And that's something that, as you said, terrified the Saudis, terrified Israel, terrified like the new alliance. And then on the other hand, you have this technology that's being shown, like, the capabilities that Israel can pull off, right? and that's being done in Iran. And now everybody over there is looking over their shoulder. Where is this going? What do you see in the future for like these Arab countries aligning with Israel, and then Iran and its new capabilities that are non-nuclear, the new administration coming in, trying to get some sort of deal together, the sanctions, all of this stuff coming together. What is the future of Iran, and what's the future of the Middle East?
Okay, you're asking me. There's too many moving factors for anybody to have I could tell you anybody coming up with a certain prediction for any of this, they're talking out of their ass. Okay, there's just way too many factors at play, and we have seen how things can change overnight. And like if you have a prediction, if I don't know, tomorrow there might be an uprising in Tehran, and also one thing that makes this all very difficult, Ali. I don't know. We're not going to have time to go into this right now. Khamenei's succession is being discussed in Iran, and when it comes to the internal politics in Iran, when usually we're talking about the people versus the reformists versus the hardliners, right? And it's mostly the people versus the government, but there's also some competition between the reformers and hardliners in Iran. But now the new dynamics at play is that the fight between the hardliners and the hardliners, right? There's actually some internal competition when it comes to what's going to happen after Khamenei's death, especially because of some recent health concerns, which I don't know if it's true or not. Probably not. I don't know. There's no way to know, but just that just being discussed brought a lot of attention to the fact that there is some internal civil war happening, not between the reformers and the hardliners, but between the hardliners themselves, right? So what's going to happen with Khamenei, and because it seems like he wants to put his son in power. That's what it seems like, right? And a lot of people are like, what the hell? No. Even the hardliners are, what the hell? No. And also Khamenei's response to this whole deal, because Khamenei had this whole we're strong, we don't need the sanctions to be removed kind of attitude for a long time. And now he's coming out and he says we have to do whatever we can to get rid of the sanctions. So a lot of his supporters are like, what the hell is with this new tone, right? So there are some signs of division there. And because most of this fight between the hardliners is happening behind, very secretly, it's just sometimes, very few times we get a glimpse behind the curtain about what's happening there, and we don't get much information when something does leak. But there's a lot happening in the background that we don't get to see, and it really depends on what the outcome of all of this is. Like, this is the future. The future of Iran mostly depends on what happens after Khamenei dies and what happens to oil prices, right? And none of this is that. I mean, the oil prices, I hope the oil prices are going to plummet, but when they're going to plummet, I mean, they already plummeted, but you're going to plummet even more. But when that's going to happen, I don't know. I don't think anybody could predict accurately, but it really depends on that. I did want to mention a few things. So when it comes to Fakhrizadeh, one thing that came out that most people didn't pay attention to, other than his killing, was the tapes that came out about his speeches about how the plan was for Fakhrizadeh to put nukes on missiles, right? Because this should have been a much bigger news, right? Because for a long time, the understanding was like, do we even know Iran has a nuclear weapons program? Right? We were like, the claim was, no, the nuclear energy was just for medicine, for energy, for research, but with and this whole United States and Israel claiming that they have evidence that no, they do have a nuclear weapons program. This is not just about energy. This is about warfare. That was dealt with a lot of skepticism, and now that was a huge discussion over these deals. People were like, well, this countries like Iran should have the right to have nuclear energy, maybe not nuclear weapons, but nuclear energy. Why are we denying him that? And people were like, dude, guys, they actually want a nuclear weapon. Apparently that information was always there, and it was available to Bush, it was available to Israel, and apparently they had these tapes for a very long time. I forgot the year they had it, but it was the Israeli intelligence actually played it for Bush. So they knew that this is a real threat from from the beginning. This should have been, when this came out that they had access to this evidence, this should have been major news, but nobody really talked about it. And last point that I want to mention is about the reaction to the killing of Fakhrizadeh by Iran. The only pathetic response they had was to pass a law that they're going to bring back enriching uranium without getting rid of all the monitors or the people that are there to watch what they're doing. But it was so obvious the way they passed that law, it was a way that they could undo it very fast, right? And that signaling of this is not a done deal, that signal of you have time to fix this and this doesn't have to go through, was so obvious to everybody that was looking at it, that Iran is acting like they're tough, but there's not much behind it. That they were signaling to the United States oh, we're just this is just us acting tough for our internal audience. This doesn't have to happen. And probably won't happen because we'd be tired of these sanctions, right? Anyways.
Yeah, so let's go to there's just a couple of questions. I think Susanna's got some, Jim King's got some, so let's just go to the there's one. Okay, yeah, so let's start with this one. Susanna saying, do you think that the international community, especially European countries, will put more pressure on the IRI okay. Due to their executions or putting dual nationals on death row by cutting ties?
The reason why Susanna is saying IRI is because Susanna is aware that a lot of people get upset if you refer to Iranian government as Iran. So yeah, Islamic Republic of Iran. Some people don't even say IRI; they say IR, Islamic Republic. Some people don't even want to mention Iran when they refer to the government. I hope it seems like it. It seems like Belgium is becoming very aggressive. Germany is making it a big deal. I do understand that it's mostly for political reasons, but we have to take what we can get. Human rights needs to, we need to reward politicians to show that when they make human rights measuring, include that in their measurements on whether or not they want to get closer to countries and I know they're hypocrites. I know they don't have the same standards for a country like Saudi Arabia, but given how little human rights seem to matter, and when it comes to deals like this, them putting it, even mentioning it, is such a breath of fresh air for us, that we need to, I know a lot of people are going to come and say it's not that, it doesn't seem like that big as important when it comes to calculating how to negotiate these things. And also a lot of people will point out to the double standards that these countries have with countries like Saudi Arabia. But our strategy as human rights activists has to be that whenever human rights is even a small part of their calculations, we need to reward them. We need to congratulate them. We need to tell them that we need to promote it as a way to celebrate any politician that makes this an issue, because politicians will respond to rewards that they get from better PR or more votes, right? So our strategy has to be to reward them with this, I think.
Yeah. So and I was thinking something else about that when you were talking about it. Yeah, I was talking about one of the reasons that they have these ties, the European countries, is because of their oil relationships, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. And also based on which country is a political ally or not an ally. And
I make my usual point on this to everybody, just to remember that this is why clean energy and getting off of oil is a national security issue. It's not just an environmental issue. It's not just a green issue. It is actually a national security issue. I mean, one of the reasons that the world has been subject to so much crap from Iran and Saudi Arabia is because of their dependence on this oil for many decades. I
think one thing else I have to mention is that the Islamic Republic, I think some people in the government were under this illusion that Europe would play favors with the Islamic Republic against United States, and they underestimated of how, even if there are some disagreements between European countries and United States, they are way more they're natural allies in ways that Europe would never be close to a country like Iran. Like the whole idea of like, oh, Trump is making Europe closer to us. Like I think they overestimated of how big of a deal that was and how close European and North American countries are as like real allies. That these are just small disagreements, a small fracture in their friendship that will go back up as soon as somebody like Biden comes into power. So yeah, I think they overplayed there. Like they relied too much on the Islamic Republic, relied too much on Europe, and now they're thinking, oh my God, these people are turning on us. Anyways, let's go to Jim King.
It's a really good question from Jim King. Trump has unilaterally extended sovereignty over territory not recognized by the international community and in contravention of UN resolutions, Golan and Western Sahara. What will Biden administration do? So for context, I mean, in Morocco, the recent deal with Morocco, there was a dispute over the Western Sahara. There's disputes with Mauritania, neighboring Mauritania. The International Court of Justice has not said that they have sovereignty over it. They've said the opposite. But one of the quid pro quos, like for the ties with Israel that Morocco recently established, diplomatic ties, was that Trump essentially said, okay, you have sovereignty over the Western Sahara. That can cause potential conflicts with Algeria, potential conflicts with Libya. There is, a whole geopolitical scene happening in North Africa over this region that can be ignited by it. So yeah, there is a risk. What will the Biden administration do? I don't know, Armin, what you think, but I don't really think they're going to do much. I mean, usually aside before Trump, if there was a policy that was enacted by a previous administration, nobody really just ripped it up and threw it away. They may sort of reformulate it. Like when Obama came in, he took the war on terror, he turned it into the AFPAC strategy, the Afghanistan-Pakistan strategy, but he didn't overturn anything. He kept the integrity of the U.S. policy intact and continuous, because if you don't do that, if you just rip up deals like Trump did or back out of like the Paris Accord, things like that, that destroys your credibility. And destroys how much people can trust you. So I think Biden will probably.
Wait, was that done by Trump administration through just with executive order? Like, how was that done?
What?
I don't know the whole promising that to Morocco, like where
the Western Sahara.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was just done unilaterally. So the U.S. president.
Yeah, I know it was done unilaterally, but without any other countries, and that's why the United Nations and everybody was like shocked by this all of a sudden promise. But within the United States, like legally, how was it done? Like,
so within the United States, to do things like that, the U.S. president has a lot of power when it comes to foreign policy. They're domestically very weak, right? Because they're dependent on the Senate, they're dependent on the Supreme Court, the House of Representatives. Everything it has its checks and balances. But when it comes to foreign policies, they can kind of pretty much have free reign to do whatever they want. They usually do it on their way out, and their second term is when they.
Yeah, but the problem is that I don't see any point for Biden to undo that. But at the same time, Biden has mentioned that he seems to be signaling that everything that Trump has done without going through Congress, he wants to undo it. So I don't know if this would be one. I don't think
he's going to undo these deals.
Yeah,
you can't undo it, because if there's anything that harms the credibility of the U.S. in terms of people trusting, he's not going to do it.
Okay, so actually, Susanna has a very good point that I want to mention. Yeah. Yes, and then after that we have to go. Well, if Iran putting European dual nationals on death row, what the F do they expect? They're pretty effing alienating. Yes, exactly. And again, when it comes to Iran taking hostage dual nationals and also so transparently and so obviously accusing them of being spies, with almost everybody knowing that they're not spies, and this is just a way for Iran relying on the fact that Europeans care more about their citizens than the Islamic Republic cares about citizens. So basically, this is Iran so transparently relying on the fact that they don't care about their citizens, dual citizens. They know that their citizenship they have with European countries, those countries care more about them than the citizenship that the Iranian citizenship is worthless, because Iran will use you as a pawn to kill you because your other parent cares more about you, right? This is basically you have two parents, and one of them is like, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to start beating our child. right? Because the other parent actually cares about it, right? So, by the way, for people that say sanctions is like unjustified in Iran, like none without all the missiles, without the nuclear weapons and all that, this by itself justifies all the sanctions. This is like Iran actively, this is an act of terror. Iran actively is going after citizens of other countries and taking them hostage as a way to get concessions from them, as a way to negotiate with them. This is an act of terror, and this by itself justifies all the sanctions.
Yeah, you have to have. There's no realistic way not to have sanctions. It's just
yeah.
I don't think there's anybody who goes into these national security briefings, I don't care how progressive and how whatever they are, doesn't matter who you are. Once you see the situation, there's no way you can back off of the sanctions. You just can't.
All right, last question, and I don't know much about
that's
this.
not the fault of the Iranian people. It's the fault of the clerical establishment.
Yes.
So Ahmed Qureshi is talking about, okay, so this is a really important event, and this is not relevant to this conversation, but we're going to talk about it in the future. The thoughts on the death of Karima Baloch in Toronto. So Karima Baloch was an activist for the separation of Balochistan, or Balochi independence, basically, or sovereignty in Pakistan. And Pakistan has a sort of double standard where they want Kashmir. They treat it as some people who should be independents, and that have a big independence fight. When it comes to Balochistan, or very, very severely persecuted, they have the complete opposite approach. And they actually got to this activist in Toronto. She was in Toronto here in exile as a refugee, and she has been she's died. I mean, we don't know how she was dead. Everybody's saying that she got killed. Generally a young activist. And this is this is a huge problem, especially if they're carrying out these things. If this is an assassination, they're doing it in places like Canada. It's a really big deal, and we're going to talk about this in the future.
Yeah, but at the time of the recording of this episode, this news happened today. So I'm gonna have to wait before I could comment on this. What?
I think it happened yesterday. Yeah, a couple of.
Well, 20. It says 23 hours. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Less than. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. So
it's
yeah.
It's insane yeah. Crazy.
I'm gonna look into it. Usually, even if I do get news like this, I avoid commenting about it until there's some more analysis, because usually the first takes within the first couple of days are wrong. So be patient. You don't have to be the first. Anyways, let's end this here, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for people who are watching this live. The video version of it is only available to our patrons. So if you are watching this live, or if you're watching the non-live video version of it, thank you so much for being a patron, and thank you so much for supporting this show. If you are watching to the short clips or the audio version of this episode, and you're not a patron, please consider supporting us. We do rely on your support to keep growing this show, and we do have a lot of I know this is arrogant, but it's justifiable. It's justified arrogance. You don't get this level of analysis, and I actually do read some of the best commentators at this, and they are beneath us. Like, we are way better than all of them combined. I'm telling you, this is a level of nuance that you're not going to get anywhere else. Okay, so please support this show and help us grow. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Be best.
The Secular Jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadists.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.